Whether you need information, tutorials, products, or simply connections to other tiny boaters around you, we have it all right here. Come on everyone, finally the heat wave took a break. Just one day. I probably can get a week's worth of work done in a day because of the temperature. I had a pretty cool day yesterday. A friend of mine, Tyler, from like way back in like high school. There's only a few of us in high school that would rather fish than go out and party, and he was one of those people. And so like 20 years later, he hits me up. It's no surprise, you know, he was competing and doing cool things with the fishing industry. He hits me, I was like, Mike, dude, I've been competing, I've been doing things, I've been holding my own. I've been doing pretty well. It's fun, but I can no longer do it. You know, things change, life changes, life adjustments. He's like, I no longer compete like that anymore, but I still have this 21-foot Ranger, and it's just a giant money pit. I don't mind throwing money into it all the time if I'm gonna compete and it's gonna do what it needs to do, but like, that's just a big hassle to have that just for recreation. And his story is very, very similar to a lot of people hit me up on Instagram and Facebook telling me, I just want to relax. You know, I've competed, I've ran the best boats out there, and I just want low maintenance, forever tiny boat. And that's one of the bigger things between a big bass boat and I guess a smaller boat. The maintenance costs, the sheer amount of cost into the boat for volume is like night and day. We'll talk about that later in a different video, but long story short, he was really picky. I told him I was like, these are good platforms if you're gonna try and go tiny again. Like, you should check out this Alumacraft V14 and V16. I think those are maybe like the best boats, like per volume in terms of like stats that you can get for a tiny boat if you're gonna like really mod your own stuff and do it. And he's like, no, it's too small. And I guess, you know, after just running the elite bass boats that are just like a stable floating dock, like it would be like for me trying to leave my boat and go to a kayak. So he wasn't trying to do that. He was real picky. So like 6 months, maybe almost a year later, he finally pulls the trigger and he gets a really awesome boat. We're gonna show you that boat in this video, but here's the bigger kick. The big kick is he wants it to be more versatile. The other big complaint with this bass boat is it could only go a few places. There's a lot of other like smaller lakes with horsepower restrictions that you can't, there's no point to take a bass boat. It's really hard to get a bass boat in there, and if you got it, you just like putt around. You can't start the outboard. I mean, you burn out your trolling motor just trying to get around the lake. And so his plan was to get a fairly large tiller style boat and get a small outboard for it, and then also get a fairly big outboard. Both tillers. He's gonna swap them in and out depending on where he's gonna go for the trip. That's another thing, but that's his plan, to get a very, very, like a giant tiny boat with multiple engine options. And you can actually do that when you run tillers. That's a bigger thing. When you run tillers, you can actually switch out motors. You can't, it's super hard to switch out motors if you have a console. It's like a big, big agenda. You can't just do it. And so we'll talk about that later, but very, very cool stuff coming up. Check this video out where we run this brand new 20 horsepower Merc on this giant Alumacraft 175 Shadow Series. Fun fact, at time of this video production, there was a giant shortage of tiller outboards across the board for all marine industries. It's just really hard, you couldn't find one. But you can convert a console motor into a tiller, so that's what we did. Fallon Marine hooked Tyler up with his brand new 20 horsepower tiller.
On an average 1 or 2 a day, we're getting requests for tiller motors and pricing for it of what's out there.
You have to pay a little extra for the tiller motor, but
It's like $300, $400 if you find the right dealer that's going to do it, that you can really make the conversion happen.
Tyler arrives to check out the new motor. It's just what you expect. We have reviews on this motor. It's a phenomenal motor, but it's one thing just to see it in person and check it out. So after a review of the motor, giving it a good once over, taking care of some paperwork, we're off to go and install this thing. it is. So we're going to be realistic. This motor is not going to get this giant boat on plane, but that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to kick it around fairly effortlessly and get around some of the restrictions and not have to burn out your trolling motor batteries the whole time, which it does really well. Pushes us around 8 or 9 miles an hour with the 10 pitch. If we went down to a 9 pitch, we'd probably see a little bit more speed and a little bit more torque. So we're just going to go ahead and kick it around on the lake, on the standard prop, get some runtime in on its braking period. Check out this boat in the meanwhile, have a little bit of fun on it. It's really hot today, so we're going to go ahead and cool off. And while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and give you a boat's eye view in the water. Alumacraft has a signature look to them. I thought it was just with their smaller boats, but really you can see it in this boat as well. More or less when you go and you taper right into the front, you see it kind of hooks up and flattens out right before the V. And I wonder if that's why they're so stable. I've been on bigger boats that don't feel as good as this boat. It's midday in the really hot summer. We have no graphs to track them in deep water. We don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off, but we're going to try and catch a fish or two to properly christen this boat's maiden voyage. So somehow we managed to stick a nice fish. Now we can test out the live well system. The live well system did actually really well. Kept the water pretty cool and circulated. There was no dirtiness, there was no deterrence, there was no residual stuff you'd see from bass who's sitting in there for a while. We left him in there for about an hour. He was maybe in better condition than we pulled him out of the water. A little bit more lively. So we released him with no problems. We fished for a little bit longer and then we just called it quits. It was too hot outside. But our maiden voyage is complete and it was a success. With actual fish on the deck, we were able to call this thing a good day. The boat performed fantastic. It did everything it needs to do, and with the tiller setup, the ability to run multiple motors on the back to fit whatever style and whatever lake and whatever restrictions or adversities that's going to happen will do well for us later. Tight lines, everyone. See ya.